This video will show you how to do a bivariate regression in SPSS. The dataset that I've uploaded into SPSS is a state politics dataset, and I've also opened up the state politics dataset codebook so that you can see how the 8 variables are coded. In the dataset, it's organized by state year, so it's information on all 50 states for the particular years of 2000 to 2016. And the variables that are state specific are unions, or the percent of the workforce that's unionized, ideology, which is state government ideology on a score from 0 to 100, 0 being the most conservative state government, score of 100 being the most liberal. A measure of state legislative professionalism, or how professional the state legislature is, from roughly a value of a -4 to +4, higher values being more professional. T-port, which is a measure of spending on transportation. More specifically, it's the percent of the state budget for that particular year spent on transportation. Debt is the real per capita debt in the particular year for the state, which is when you have a per capita measure, it's the amount of debt per person. And since it's in real per capita debt figures, that is the amount of debt per person adjusted for inflation. The surplus variable is the state's budget surplus in per person dollars and adjusted for inflation. So it's real per capita surplus. If you see the negative value, that means the state is not operating in a surplus, it's actually in debt. So for example, this value of a -12.6 means that for Alabama in the year 2000, the amount of debt per person in the state was about $12.61. When you look at the data set, for example, cell 14, this is Alabama in 2013. Their workforce for that year, 10% of it was unionized. The state government ideology score was 20.54, so on the conservative side, with 50 being perfectly centrist. The value for state legislative professionalism is missing, which we're not going to worry about right now, but it's left blank or given a little dot. T-port is 6.4% of the state's budget was spent on transportation. The state debt was $1,801.78 per person, and the surplus, they're operating in the red. You see the negative value. The real per capita figure, $202 and about 14 cents. If you want to run a bivariate regression, for example, let's hypothesize that state government ideology is a function of the percent of the workforce that's unionized. One could hypothesize that the more unionized a state, the more liberal its state government is going to be. To run a bivariate regression with these two variables, with ideology as the dependent variable and unions as the independent variable, you go to Analyze, Regression, Linear. Reset this so it's blank is how you see it. You should see this blank box. It's very self-explanatory. In the dependent box, ideology should go there because that's our dependent variable that we've set. And we think ideology is a function of the percentage of the state workforce that's unionized, so that's the unions variable. It goes to the independence box. Click OK, and SPSS will give you a lot of boxes. The main one to look at is going to be the coefficients box. What it gives you is the independent variable unions and its effect on the dependent variable, which is ideology. So you see, and you always have to look under unstandardized coefficients, and you see the B or beta, as we mentioned in class. The beta for unions is 1.809. So if you were to interpret it, on average, ceteris paribus, a 1 unit increase in the percent of the workforce unionized leads to a 1.809 unit. The beta is positive, so it's an increase in the ideology score. So when you look at this more specifically, for each 1 unit increase in the unions variable, a 1 unit increase is a 1% increase because that's how it's coded. So as you increase the unionization of the state workforce by 1%, the state government ideology score goes up by 1.809 units. Remember, the state ideology scores ranges from 0 to 100. Beta is positive. It's in our hypothesized direction. Is it statistically significant? Yes. If you look at the SIG column for unions, it's 0.000, so that's good. We want anything to be less. We want the SIG value to be 0.05 or less, and that'll be 95% significant. If it's 0.01 or less, it's 99% statistically significant. So we would say yes, that the effect of unions on state government ideology in this bivariate regression is statistically significant at least the 99% level, probably even the 99.9 if you want to be super specific. The constant is the alpha or the A value or the y-intercept as we discussed in class, that the computer program puts the best fitting line through the data, and that's where the line hits the y-axis at 27.650. So if we wanted to interpret the constant or A or alpha, however you want to phrase it, we would set all of our x's to 0. In this case, the only x or independent value or variable, is unions. So we're going to set unions to 0. So when unions is 0 or when 0% of the workforce is unionized, we can expect the dependent variable, the state ideology score, to be 27.650. And that's towards the more conservative range. So set all your x's to 0, and that's what the constant or the alpha or the A gives you. So if there were no unions in the state, if 0% of the workforce was unionized, we'd expect the dependent variable state ideology to be 27.65. The other thing to look towards is the R-square. The R-squared value gives you the percent of the variation in the dependent variable that can be explained by the independent variables. We have one independent variable, that is unions. So we would say 15.5%, so move that decimal over 2 places, 0.155 goes to 15.5% of the variation in the dependent variable of state government ideology can be explained by the independent variable unions, or the percent of the workforce unionized. It's a basic measure of model fit. It basically determines how much of the dependent variable we're explaining with our independent variables, and with just unions, we're basically explaining 15.5% of the state government ideology score. If you add more independent variables, that number will go up, and you should add more variables, as you'll see when we discuss the multivariate regression, because we know that a government's ideology is a function of much more than just one variable. It's definitely a function of more than just the percent of the workforce that's unionized. But that's a later class, so for now you see that the most important numbers to look for in a bivariate regression, you're going to look at the independent variable's effect under the unstandardized coefficients B or beta column. It gives it standard error. But it's real easy to find its significance level. Just look under the SIG column and you see it's 0.000, highly significant. The constant or the y-intercept or the alpha, 27.650. And you're going to look at the R-squared value of 0.155.